Welcome, gentle friend, to Dreamy Detections. Thank you for choosing this quiet corner as your sanctuary, a peaceful place to rest your mind. Our story tonight is a soft melody, crafted to help you release the day, find gentle contentment, and drift easily into sleep. Your presence is a gift, and if you find comfort here, a soft like, a subscription, or a kind comment to share your peaceful thoughts would be deeply appreciated. Tonight we will be visiting the village of Wispwillow, a place nestled in a calm valley where time moves at the pace of a slow, easy breath. Join us in a cozy cottage where the armchairs are soft and the air is scented with lavender. Together, we will discover the source of a gentle, harmonious hum that has begun to fill the village, a sound that offers not a jarring puzzle, but a profound and peaceful respite from the world outside. Chapter 1. The Arrival of Quiet. The journey to Wispwillow had been a quiet one, a gentle unwinding of roads that seemed to shed the weight of the world with every turn. For Rowan, it felt less like traveling to a new place and more like returning to a state of being he had long forgotten. His small car finally came to a soft stop before a cottage that looked as though it had grown from the earth itself, its pale stone walls draped in a thick blanket of ivy, its thatched roof the color of dried honey. The key, a heavy, simple piece of iron, turned in the old wooden door with a satisfying muffled clunk, a sound of welcome. The air inside the cottage was cool and still, holding the layered scents of beeswax, dried lavender, and the faint, clean perfume of old books. A single beam of late afternoon sun slanted through a window pane, illuminating a universe of dancing dust motes in its golden path. Rowan's gaze fell upon an armchair by the hearth, a magnificent piece of furniture upholstered in a faded floral fabric, its cushions plump and deeply inviting. He did not unpack. Instead, he walked to the chair, allowing himself to sink into its soft, deep embrace, feeling the day's travel dissolve from his bones as if the chair itself were absorbing it. He sat there for a long time, watching as the light in the room softened from gold to a dusky rose, and then to a gentle, shadowy blue. The silence here was different from the silence of his old town library. It was not an absence of sound, but a presence of peace. It was a thick, velvety quiet, woven through with the distant, contented coo of a wood pigeon and the almost imperceptible rustle of the ivy leaves against the window pane. Rowan felt his breath deepen, his shoulders, which he hadn't realized were tense, relaxing downward. As twilight began to draw its soft gray veil over the village, Rowan felt a gentle pull to explore. He slipped on a warm cardigan and stepped outside. The air was crisp and smelled of damp earth and wood smoke. He walked along the lane, his footsteps making only the softest of sounds on the worn flagstones. Lights were beginning to appear in cottage windows, small squares of warm, buttery yellow that made the deepening blue of the evening feel cozy rather than cold. Each light was a small beacon of peaceful, ordinary life. It was then that he first heard it. It was not a sound that began suddenly, but one that he seemed to become aware of all at once, as if it had been there all along, waiting patiently for him to be quiet enough to notice. It was a hum, a low, resonant, and deeply soothing sound that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the village. It was not the mechanical drone of a generator or the buzz of electricity. This was a sound with texture and warmth, a chord of harmonious notes that rose and fell in a slow, gentle rhythm. Rowan stopped in the middle of the lane, closing his eyes to better receive the sound. The hum vibrated not just in his ears, but in the center of his chest, a gentle, calming frequency that seemed to align with his own peaceful heartbeat. It did not provoke curiosity in the usual sense. It did not feel like a problem to be investigated, or a mystery needing a solution. Instead, it felt like an answer, a confirmation. It was the sound of a place that was truly at peace with itself. He turned and walked slowly back to his cottage, the hum following him like a gentle companion. Back inside, curled once more in the soft depths of the armchair, he could still hear it, a faint and distant lullaby carried on the night air. It was the sound of Wispwillow breathing its slow, contented sigh. Rowan closed his eyes, a small, serene smile touching his lips as he felt himself drifting on that gentle current of sound toward the shores of a deep and restorative sleep. The quiet he had been searching for was not just an absence of noise. Here, in Wispwillow, the quiet had a voice, and it was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. Chapter 2. The Texture of Time. Rowan awoke not to an alarm, but to the gentle insistence of morning light painting a soft stripe across his pillow. The air was cool and fresh, and through the slightly open window, the village's signature hum was a faint but constant presence, like the lowest, most peaceful note on a grand organ. It was a comforting reassurance that he was truly here, in Wispwillow. His first morning was a quiet ritual, a slow dance of simple actions. He filled a kettle with water, its weight familiar and grounding in his hands, and spooned fragrant, loose-leaf chamomile tea into a ceramic pot, enjoying the soft rustle of the dried flowers. While the tea steeped, he stood at the kitchen window, which looked out onto a small, slightly overgrown garden. A patch of determined mint grew by the back step, and a few resilient lavender bushes stood like stoic sentinels. He made a quiet promise to himself to tend to this small patch of green, to feel the soil in his hands, and nurture the simple life it held. The act of pouring the pale golden tea into a thick, comforting mug, of watching the steam curl into the air, felt more significant here, more deeply satisfying than it ever had before. Later that morning, with a warm mug cradled in his hands, Rowan ventured out for a proper walk, intending to see the village in the full light of day. Wispwillow was even more charming than it had appeared in the twilight. The cottages, with their thick stone walls and blooming window boxes, seemed to lean into one another companionably. There was no grand high street, only a single meandering lane that widened slightly in the center of the village before continuing on its quiet way. He found the source of the warm, yeasty scent he had noticed last night, the Warm Hearth Bakery. Its windows were bright and clean, and through them he could see racks of golden brown loaves of bread. A woman with flour dusting her apron and a kind, gentle face was arranging scones on a tray. She glanced up, caught his eye, and gave him a small, welcoming smile and a slight nod. Rowan returned the gesture, feeling a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with his tea. It was a simple, unspoken welcome. A few doors down, he found the Clockmaker's shop. It was just as he had imagined, a place that seemed to be holding its breath. The sign above the door was faded, the words Arthur's timepieces barely legible. The large front window was hazy with a fine layer of dust, obscuring whatever lay within. Ivy crept up the sides of the door frame, its green leaves like sleeping fingers. It was from here, he was certain, that the hum emanated. Standing before the silent shop, the sound was clearer, more defined. He could distinguish different tones within the chord, a low, steady bass note and higher, softer notes that seemed to weave around it like fine, silk threads. It was the sound of deep, intricate peace. He did not feel the need to peer inside or to knock on the door. To do so would feel like an interruption, a disruption of the shop's long, quiet slumber. He was content simply to stand there and listen, to be a passive observer of this gentle anomaly. It was like appreciating a piece of art or a beautiful view. Its purpose was simply to be, and his was simply to experience it. Other villagers passed by as he stood there, and he noticed that none of them hurried. Their steps were unhurried, their faces calm. The hum was a part of their landscape, as natural as the green hills that cradled the village. Returning to his cottage, Rowan felt a sense of settling deep within him. He spent the afternoon in his armchair, a book open but unread on his lap, simply listening. He was beginning to understand the texture of time in Wispwillow. It did not tick by in sharp, unforgiving seconds. It flowed like a slow and gentle river. It was measured in the gradual shifting of light across the floor, the time it took for a cup of tea to cool to the perfect temperature, and the constant soothing pulse of the gentle hum from the clockmaker's shop. He realized he hadn't thought about his old life, his old routines, even once that day. His mind, usually so busy with lists and worries, was quiet. It was filled only with the simple sensory details of his new home, the warmth of the sun on his face, the taste of chamomile on his tongue, and the beautiful harmonious sound that was the village's very own lullaby. Chapter 3. A Harmony of Hearts. Several peaceful days flowed one into the next, each a soft echo of the last. Rowan established a gentle rhythm for himself, a routine built not around necessity, but around simple comforts. He found a particular joy in his morning walks, which always seemed to lead him past the warm hearth bakery. The scent that wafted from its door was a daily invitation, a promise of warmth and simple goodness. Today, he decided to accept. Pushing open the wooden door, a small bell announced his arrival with a cheerful yet gentle jingle. The air inside was a comforting embrace, thick with the aromas of baking bread, melting butter, and a hint of cinnamon. The warmth was immediate, seeping into his clothes and chasing away the morning's slight chill. Behind a wooden counter laden with scones, muffins, and beautiful crusty loaves stood the woman he had seen before. She looked up from her work, her smile as warm as the room itself. "Good morning," she said, her voice soft and friendly. "Welcome." "Good morning," Rowan replied, his own voice feeling a little rusty from disuse. "It smells wonderful in here." He introduced himself, and she replied that her name was Beatrice. There was an ease to her presence, a genuine and uncomplicated kindness that put him instantly at ease. He bought a loaf of still warm sourdough and a single lavender scone, the simple transaction feeling like a meaningful exchange. As Beatrice wrapped his bread in brown paper, Rowan found himself asking, "That sound, the hum from down the lane, it's very beautiful." He felt a little shy admitting his fascination with it, but Beatrice's expression didn't show surprise, only a knowing contentment. "Ah, yes," she said, her hands stilling for a moment. "That's our new lullaby. It only started a few weeks ago. Isn't it the most peaceful thing?" Her words, "our new lullaby," resonated deeply with Rowan. It confirmed what he had felt from the beginning. The hum was not a mystery to be solved, but a gift to be shared. It belonged to the village. "It is," he agreed softly. "It makes the whole village feel calm." Beatrice nodded, handing him his warm parcel. "It does. Old Arthur has been quiet in that shop for so many years. It is nice to hear a happy sound coming from it again." Rowan left the bakery with his warm bread and an even warmer feeling of connection. He sat on a bench in the small village square, the gentle hum a constant soothing companion. He watched as other villagers went about their morning. A woman from the flower shop carefully tended to a bucket of bright zinnias, her movements slow and deliberate. The man who ran the small post office swept his front step with unhurried strokes. Rowan noticed that from time to time each of them would pause for just a moment, a soft, distant look on their face as they too listened to the village's song. He saw a mother gently push her child on a small swing in the park, and as she did, she hummed along with the sound, her own quiet harmony blending with the larger one. The hum was not just a background noise, it was an active participant in the life of Wispwillow. It was a shared secret, an open secret, that bound them all together in a blanket of collective peace. It was a harmony not just of notes, but of hearts. Walking back to his cottage, Rowan felt as if he had been woven more deeply into the fabric of the village. He was no longer just an observer looking in. He was a part of the quiet audience, sharing in this simple, communal wonder. That afternoon, as he sat in his armchair eating a slice of the warm sourdough bread, its chewy texture and tangy taste a simple perfection, the hum seemed to have a new richness to it. It was the sound of contentment, the sound of community, the sound of a place where peace was the most valued treasure of all. Chapter 4. The Clockmaker's Lullaby. A week later, on an evening when the sky was the color of a soft plum and the first stars were beginning to appear, Rowan was taking his customary twilight walk. As he approached the clockmaker's shop, something was different. A soft, warm, golden light was spilling from the dusty front window, and the door, which he had only ever seen firmly shut, was slightly ajar. The hum seemed to emanate from this small opening, not louder, but somehow more inviting, as if it were a beckoning finger of sound. Rowan hesitated on the lane, a feeling of gentle reverence holding him in place. This felt like a significant moment, the quiet revealing of a long-held secret. He felt no urge to intrude, but a gentle curiosity pulled him forward. He approached the door as quietly as a moth and peered through the opening. The sight within was one of organized and beautiful clutter. The small shop was filled with clocks of every shape and size, their pendulums still, their hands frozen. And in the center of the room, bathed in the warm glow of a single hanging lamp, stood the source of the hum. It was a magnificent creation, a clock that was less a machine and more a work of art. It was tall and elegant, crafted from a dark, rich wood that shone with a deep luster. Instead of a traditional face with numbers, its center was a complex and beautiful array of polished brass discs, slowly rotating cylinders, and carefully weighted chimes of varying lengths. It was this intricate dance of moving parts that produced the gentle, harmonious chord that had so captivated the village. It was a clock that did not tick, but sang. An elderly man with kind eyes and a cascade of white hair stood beside it, his hand resting on its wooden frame as if it were a beloved pet. This had to be Arthur. He seemed to be listening intently, a look of profound satisfaction on his face. He must have sensed Rowan's presence, for he turned his head slowly and looked towards the door. There was no surprise in his gaze, only a quiet, gentle welcome. He offered a small, serene smile and gestured for Rowan to come inside. Rowan stepped over the threshold, feeling as though he were entering a sacred space. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, for fear of breaking the spell. Arthur nodded, his eyes shining with a quiet pride. "Thank you," he said, his voice as soft as the hum itself. "It took a long time. My father and his father before him, they measured time in seconds. I wanted to measure it in peace." He explained in a few simple and humble sentences that this harmony clock had been his life's work. He had spent decades perfecting the intricate mechanics, tuning each chime and weighting each gear to create a sound that would give comfort rather than create urgency. He had finally completed it a few weeks ago, and the hum was its first and only song. The puzzle was not a puzzle at all. It was simply the gentle, beautiful result of a life's passion, a quiet gift offered to the village. Rowan stayed for a few moments longer, simply standing in the warm light and listening to the clock's lullaby up close. It was a sound of incredible complexity and perfect simplicity all at once. When he finally left, offering a quiet word of thanks, he felt a sense of serene completion. The last gentle piece of the Wispwillow picture had fallen softly into place. Back in his cottage, the hum that filled the night air now held an even deeper meaning. It was the sound of dedication, of artistry, and of one man's quiet love for his home. It was Arthur's lullaby, and now it was a lullaby for them all. Rowan sank into his armchair, closed his eyes, and let the gentle, harmonious hum carry him into the most peaceful sleep he had ever known.